I didn't go to Russia, of course, to promote Vladimir Putin, and if that was my purpose, I'd say so, because I'm not embarrassed. I went because I felt that most Americans, in whose name all of this is being done, don't really know what's happening, and they know nothing about the guy they're supposedly at war with, unofficially. And I just felt that my job, if I have a job in this world, is to bring information to people so they can decide. And so I wanted to do the longest interview I could with Vladimir Putin that contained the most amount of Vladimir Putin talking, not me grandstanding about what a great person I am. When an American journalist interviews someone like Vladimir Putin, the whole point of the interview is to say, I'm a good person and you're not. And that interview was aimed at his colleagues in the newsrooms in the United States. I'm a good person. Why are you such a bad person? You're committing genocide. Okay. That's not fruitful, and that's certainly not my role. I care what God thinks of me, what my wife thinks of me, and what my 4 children think of me, and that's all I care about. So I don't need to prove that I'm a good person. I want to hear Vladimir Putin talk so people in my country can assess what's happening. First things first, Putin wants to get out of this war. He's not going to become more open to negotiation the longer this goes on. One of the things we've learned in the course of the last 2 years is that Russia's industrial capacity is a lot more profound than we thought it was. I mean, Russia's having Russia, this country we were assured was a gas station with nuclear weapons, has a pretty easy time making missiles, rockets, and artillery shells, whereas NATO doesn't. So we should think about what that means, 1. 2, the West doesn't spend any time, or our policymakers in Washington spend no time thinking about, like, what are the achievable goals here. I have heard, personally, US government officials say, well, we're just going to have to return Crimea to Ukraine. Well, you don't need to be a Russia scholar to know that's not going to happen short of a nuclear war. That's insane, actually. So even to say something like that reveals that you're a child, you don't understand the area at all, and you have no real sense of what's possible. And so as long as our leaders, and not simply in the US, but NATO, and I really mean Germany, don't take the time to learn about what's possible, we're not going to get anywhere.
Does Biden understand the law of action and reaction which moves a country like Russia?
I can't overstate how incapacitated Joe Biden is. That's not an attack. That is a fact. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. So these are not decisions Joe Biden is making. But there are capable people around Biden, and I know them. What they lack is any perspective at all. So a conversation with a US policymaker about the history of the region would begin and end with a conversation about, of course, Chamberlain and Churchill and Hitler, period. So the American policymaker historical template is tiny. In fact, there's only one. And it's a 2-year period in the late 1930s. And everything is based on that understanding of history and human nature. And that's insane. And so actually, American policymakers have convinced themselves that Vladimir Putin is going to take over Poland. And it is not a defense of Putin. I don't mean to defend Putin. I'm not a fan of Putin's, and I'm not a subject of Putin's. I'm an American. However, there's no evidence that Putin has any interest in expanding his borders. He is the largest country in the world, and it's very hard to run. They don't need natural resources. There's nothing in Poland he wants. There's nothing he will gain by taking Poland other than more trouble. So that is, if you're saying that he's going to invade Poland, you don't know what you're talking about. The United States is, for this moment, is the most powerful country in the history of the world. So if you were to frame this in terms we're all familiar with, which are the most basic terms, the terms of the family, the United States would be dad, would be the father. And the father's sacred obligation is to protect his family and to restore peace within his walls. So if I come home, I have 4 children, if I come home from work and 2 of my kids are fighting, what's the first thing I do? Even before I assess why they're fighting, before I gather the facts and know what's happening.
I stop the fight.
I stop fighting.
Yes.
So if I come home and I have 2 kids fighting and I say, go, go, beat the crap out of them, I am evil. Because I've violated the most basic duty of fatherhood, which is to bring peace. Because I have the power. I'm the only one who can bring peace. And so if you see a nation with awesome power abetting war for its own sake, you have a leadership that has no moral authority, that is illegitimate.